Friday, the 28th of July 2023, today at Camnet TV, not just another channel. I will be with you between now and 09 hours, where we will be discussing a lot of important aspects of what is happening around in the country. I am your host this morning, Prudence Chota. If you hear that name, Prudence Chota, yes, you're looking at her. I remember just a few weeks ago meeting someone, and they were like, oh, in fact, two days ago on Monday, I met someone at one of the meetings, and when they looked at me, I introduced myself. They're like, oh, it's actually good to, now have a picture of you with your voice. We just hear your voice, but we don't know who you are. So this morning, if you've just tuned in to Camnet TV, yes, I am Prudence Chota, your host, and we'll be having a wonderful discussion between now and 09 hours. Remember also that this Camnet TV breakfast show is coming live to your screen, and of course, on our gadgets, that is on our Facebook platform. You too can be part of the conversation this morning by calling the numbers that are on the screen. Should you feel you need to contribute to the topics that we'll be discussing this morning and other things that will be played on the program, you have that opportunity to be heard through the number that is on the screen. So you can call and we can have an interaction. Today, the 28th of July, we've closed July. At least if you've reached today, you've reached half of the year plus a month into the year 2023. Those goals you laid down, you need to start ticking. Are you achieving those goals? If you've not written down anything, maybe just a word of advice to you, just go and have some time to reflect on the things that you want to achieve. Put them on paper, put them on the wall of your bedroom, so that when you wake up, the very moment you open your eyes, the first thing you see is the goals and the things that you want to achieve. That way, it will keep reminding you of the importance of working hard to ensure you achieve that goal. So it is important for you to plan. Remember, even the government has a national budget, which they will be announcing in October this year, and I hope you have been part of the budget formulation process. Some of you have been asking, how can I be part of the budget formulation process? Ask where the Ward Development Committee in your area is. Actually, they sit. They don't call community members where they sit. They ask you to make submissions. Those submissions have been submitted to the WDCs, who submit them to the relevant authorities, and then the submissions reach the Ministry of Finance. So you too can be part of that budgeting process. But remember, even the country as a whole does make its own budget for the whole year, the things they want to achieve. You too can do that. Let's have aspirations, something that you want to achieve. Write it down, stick it on the wall. Every morning when you wake up, look at those goals, go in the mirror, look at yourself, and remind yourself that I can do this, I can achieve this. Just that, an advice, a tip to a success story. I feel like becoming a motivation speaker. But before I do that, let's go into the health corner to see what the doctor has for us this morning. Stay glued to Camnet TV.
Hi, good morning and welcome to the Health Corner here on the Breakfast Show. I am Dr. Nakubiana Mfaya. So this week we have been looking at a very interesting topic, and it's a condition that affects women. So we are concluding our Women's Month, and so we've been talking about conditions that affect women this month. So this week we've been talking about polycystic ovarian syndrome, and we say that polycystic ovarian syndrome is a condition where there is increased production of male hormones in the female body, and this results in irregular menses or not having menses at all. And most of the times these women would have cysts that form in the body or in the ovaries. And they might have other symptoms such as having hair loss and even having facial hairs on the face, mustache or a beard. So today we also discuss some of the causes, and we say that it's usually caused by insulin resistance, and this comes about because there's increased production of insulin in the body, because the body is not really using up the sugars that you are taking in, and so it tries to produce more insulin, and so because of the increased insulin that is being produced in the body not utilizing that insulin, it causes some irregularities in the way the body performs, and so you might have not producing enough hormones of the female nature and not producing hormones that help to regulate your menses. So usually it's treated in the hospital with some oral contraceptives and other medications as well that help to reduce the amount of male hormones in the body. And you need to also make sure that you're eating a healthy diet and staying healthy, and also exercising to lose weight and to just keep your body fit, because with exercise also the body is able to utilize your sugars and also reducing the amount of insulin that it produces. So today we'll talk about the complications of polycystic ovarian syndrome. What are the complications? If you have this condition, what are some of the things that you need to be on the lookout for, because they might cause certain problems in the body? So one of them is that you might experience infertility, and so you might have struggle or have difficulties trying to conceive. And so if you need help on trying to conceive, you can always go to the hospital, and you'll be guided on what to do and what medications to take to be able to regulate your menses and also conceive. The other thing is that because of the insulin resistance that people with polycystic ovarian syndrome would have, they are at risk of developing type 2 diabetes. And so they might have type 2 diabetes that develops because of the insulin resistance. They may also have gestational diabetes. This is where they have diabetes while they are pregnant. And usually also they might have what we call sleep apnea, because these are people who might be very obese, and so they might have difficulties trying to sleep, and when they are sleeping they usually wake up at night because they can't breathe very well, and so they have sleep apnea. The other thing that is of concern with people who have polycystic ovarian syndrome is that they might develop cancer of the endometrium, because they are not shedding out the blood that is collected in the endometrium. So you might have endometrial hyperplasia, where the endometrium starts producing more cells, and they develop cancer in the endometrium because they are not having their menses every month. And so the buildup in the endometrium or the uterus or the womb can cause cancer, which can be very detrimental for people who have this condition. So these are some of the conditions that can result from having polycystic ovarian syndrome, and it's important that you get yourself checked. You also need to be going for regular checkups to reduce on these complications that can result from this condition. Make sure that you also eat healthy. Make sure that you're eating a healthy diet. Reduce on the amount of fat that you eat in your diet. Also eat more fruits, eat more vegetables, and also exercise. You need to exercise at least 3 to 5 times in a week, and at least get at least 30 minutes of exercise every day for at least 3 to 5 times in a week. And try to lose weight as well if you are overweight or obese. That is how you can be able to prevent some of these complications if you have polycystic ovarian syndrome. And even your children, whether they are still in their teenage years, you can also encourage them to adhere to some of these guidelines, so that they might reduce on having these complications as well. So I do hope you have learned something, and if you have any questions, you can reach out to me on Facebook at Dr. Nakubiana Mpayasiameka, and make sure that you also watch my YouTube channel, where I post all these videos, and you'll be able to learn more about these conditions as well. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next week. God bless.
There you have it. That was Dr. Fire today talking about polycystic ovarian syndrome. I feel like I've become a medical practitioner. Polycystic ovarian syndrome. Yes, of course, she was discussing that, a number of things that she's talked about in case you're having challenges in conceiving and what you need to do to ensure that you do not reach to those levels. I know she was talking about issues that have to do with the endometrium, you know, where the whole women thing happen, and when you're having complications in shedding some of, you know, the human mechanism or the ovaries, from there that sometimes can contribute to you having a cyst, which sometimes may lead to cancer. So she talked about exercising, where you have to exercise on a regular basis, eat healthy food. Sometimes pardon me, we actually think eating healthy is expensive. Sometimes it's not. You know that we've even got bananas for 1 kwacha. When you go to Soweto, you'll find there are quite a number of bananas there. I think you can get an apple at 2 kwacha 15 where you can get, you know, oranges at 3 kwacha, those big oranges and 2 kwacha. Sometimes life doesn't have to be expensive. If you cannot afford to buy in more, you can just simply go to Soweto. There we've got Soweto, various types of fruits there, avocados. If you can't buy the expensive ones, I know in malls you find them at 20, 30 kwacha, 40 kwacha per avocado, 2 avocados. But if you cannot afford, you can even still go, you know, to Soweto. If you cannot afford to buy that expensive tomato, go to Soweto. 5 kwacha, you can get yourself tomato for 2 to 3 days that you can use. You can get yourself onions, vegetables, you know, the dry fish, the beans, the everything is there. If you cannot afford to go in a mall, there is still Soweto for if you're in Lusaka. Even in other places, you know, in markets, there are those markets where people come, where the farmers, before we call it a farmer section, when farmers bring the things. Sometimes wake up in the morning, wherever you are, just go to those places and buy yourself things. Life doesn't have to be expensive. In as much as, yes, sometimes things are hard. And we did also see yesterday one aspect of, you know, the rise in commodity prices contributing to inflation rate. Yesterday, the Zambia Statistical Agency did give us statistics, and inflation rate has hit 10.3, a double digit for the first time in over 13 months. And that was attributed to the movement in price of food. Compared to last month and this month, we've seen slightly a movement in the price of food commodities, which has resulted in the increase in inflation rate. Remember, the European administration has been predicting that inflation rate should be between 6 to 8%, and they've been working towards that. But that is not happening because the price of commodities are now increasing. We will zoom into that story later on, but right about now, let's look into the money market, how our local currency is performing against other major convertibles. Even as we talk about, you know, these inflation rates, sometimes we need to understand the fundamentals that are contributing to, you know, the increase in our local currency, that is the kwacha. So there you have it. As of today, the 28th of July 2023, as at 0706 hours, the Zambian kwacha against the Great British Pound, pardon me, there was buying at 23 kwacha 47 ngwe and selling at 23 kwacha 93 ngwe. The Zambian kwacha against the euro, they are buying at 20 kwacha 10 ngwe and selling at 20 kwacha 49 ngwe. The Zambian kwacha against the South African rand, buying at 1.03 kwacha and selling at 1.05 kwacha. Slight movement there from where we were last week Friday, because I remember it was buying around 1.4 and selling around 1.6, but we've seen just a slight appreciation there. So the Zambian kwacha against the United States dollar is buying at 18 kwacha 26 ngwe and selling at 18 kwacha 62 ngwe. That is the money market for this morning. Zambian kwacha against the Great British Pound there, against the euro, rand, and South African rand, and of course the United States dollar, buying at 18 kwacha 26 ngwe and selling at 18 kwacha 46 ngwe. So that is the money market for this morning. Zambian kwacha not performing according to what we are expecting, but we've seen just a slight appreciation from where we were last week on a Friday. If you remember, Zambian kwacha, as at last week Friday around this time, was buying around 19 kwacha 02 ngwe, if I get it very correctly, somewhere there. And you remember, even on the show, I did say we didn't expect that it would be there. But here we are. We've seen slight appreciation, but that also is not enough for a country that just had its debt restructuring process announced for about 6.3 billion. And then we did also see the IMF announce that they are releasing 188 million to the Zambian government. But also, in the course of the week, we did speak to some economists on why, you know, despite all these positive announcements and sentiments that have been made, Zambian kwacha does not just seem to be complying, or rather responding to this development. And one of the aspects that came out from economist Yusuf Dodia is the fact that, you know, the money that the IMF is giving Zambia is not really meant for economic development. It has no economic impact, because that 188, remember, 50% is supposed to go towards the reserve, national reserve. When we say reserve, you know, when you get paid, that kind of thing you put in a bank, you just put it there for reserves or future use or for emergencies. So part of that money, 50%, is just supposed to go to the reserves of the country, and 50% is supposed to be used to finance the budget. But even when it comes to that, that money, according to Mr. Dodia, is not supposed to be used for economic development, but for social protection. Social protection, remember that money they give the poor, that people get paid, it's supposed to go towards that. And also the strengthening of governance institutions. Governance institutions such as the Anti-Corruption Commission, in order for them to fight corruption, the Zambia Police, the Drug Enforcement Commission, and other institutions. So you'll find that that money is not directly going into economic aspect, but being used for social cash protection and governance issues. So according to Mr. Dodia, because that IMF bailout package is targeted for that, it becomes very difficult to see economic impact. According to him, the only thing that we need is a constant inflow of dollars in the country, and that can only be done if the country becomes industrialized. If we can produce and export, that way we will be attracting more resources. And that also definition was backed by ZIPA researcher there, who also mentioned, we did speak to ZIPA, and they mentioned to say we are a mono economy. Provided we continue to be a mono economy, there is no way that our local currency is going to be performing stronger than other convertibles unless we become an industrial-based economy. So these are some of the fundamentals that have been contributing to the Zambian kwacha not appreciating despite all these positive announcements that have been made. Speaking about that also, yesterday, the Zambia Statistical Agency Interim Statistician General Musepa Milenga did announce that the inflation rate for the country has gone to 10.3%. This is the highest we are recording in almost 1 year. Remember, the last time inflation was about 10.4 or 10.3, if I remember very well, was in April of 2022. That was last year. From there, we did see the inflation rates come to 1 digit, and it has been moving around that. And I think slightly this year, we did see inflation go to 10.2, if not mistaken, 10.1 just there. And again, it went back to a 1 digit. But what has happened is now, because of the increase in the price of commodities, we've got commodities such as bread. You know, bread increases due to aspects that have to do with flour, which is wheat. So as it stands, bread, we've got fish, and other commodity increase have contributed to the rise in inflation rate. But in case you're wondering what is inflation rate, but generally tomato pera jargon, inflation rate in each. If inflation rate just basically measures the movement in the price of commodities over a given period of time. So for example, sometimes we compare annual inflation rate between last year in June and this year. How has the price of commodity varied? So if we've seen a slight increase, we'll say, okay, inflation rate, price ya fiakudia, or if into na finina kopa, no, by this It's just basically measures that difference. Some other people, you know, even define it as the purchasing power of your local currency. Sometimes also speaks to aspect of inflation rate. So Mr. Msepa Mlenga says the increase in the annual inflation rate was due to increase in the annual food inflation rate, which increased to 12.1% compared to 11.2% in the previous month. Mr. Msepa says the increase in the food inflation rate has been attributed to price movement in cereals, fish, milk, cheese, eggs, as well as vegetables. Meanwhile, Mr. Msepa, pardon me, says the country recorded a trade surplus of 0.9 billion kwacha in June 2023 compared to a surplus of 0.5 billion kwacha in May of 2023. Let us zoom into that story that made headline in our news yesterday so that we see what we are talking about.
July overall monthly inflation increased to 0.9% from 0.8% recorded in the previous month, that is the month of June. And the main driver basically was the component of food inflation, which increased to 1% from 0.9% in June 2023. And whilst basically the monthly non-food inflation remained unchanged at 0.7. So basically the movement in the monthly overall inflation was driven by the movement, the increase in food inflation on a monthly basis, and the main drivers in there were bread and cereals. Of course, we also recorded some movements in meat and vegetables. Now, out of these movements, if we now look at the annual inflation rose to 10.3% from 9.8% recorded in June 2023. And again, as on a monthly basis, this was mainly explained by the movements in food prices of food items. We're reporting that the country recorded a trade surplus of 0.9 billion in June, compared to 0.04 billion in the month of May, and we do record this with a lag of 1 month.
There you have it there, Mr. Mlenga Msepa giving us an update on the country's inflation rate. Seeing inflation rate for the country now moved to 10.3%, the highest in over 12 months. I know this is what the European administration has been trying to avoid, you know, having a high inflation rate, but as it stands, the prices of goods and commodities are slightly going up. We've seen a cereal there, fish, milk, cheese, and eggs, as well as vegetables, being attributed to one of the reasons why the annual food inflation rate rose, which also resulted in the increase in the average annual inflation rate for the country. So remember, there is food inflation rate, there is month on month. You compare last month to this month, how did the prices of commodities, Terry. But also you should note that when we talk about inflation, we are not meaning the price has increased by, it's you are comparing between last month and this month. What is the percentage increase? Remember, inflation rate is calculated using percentage. So what is the percentage increase? So if you look at last month and this month, we had an increase of about 0.9% in terms of movement in the price of food and commodities. 0.9%. That was the increase, the difference between last month and this month. So because of that difference, Karaka increase in the price of commodities, we also saw the annual inflation rate being affected, as well as the annual food inflation rate. So of course, we will expect economists to come and explain some of these things. That's why we've been inviting economists. If you do watch this show on Friday, various economists from different organizations and institutions do come, and some of these questions we do ask them. They can explain very well how they are measured, how they impact you as a consumer, and stuff like that. But what we know so far is that the kwacha is not performing according to expectations. We are now seeing an increase in the price of commodity, resulting now in the price of inflation, the inflation rate going up. Then also remember the Jesuit Center for Theological Reflection, JCTR, in the BNB basket for last month did show an increase in the cost of living. When we talk about the cost of living, this is how much a family of 5, for example, in Lusaka would spend in a month if they are to live averagely on, life on an average basis. That is, you pay rent, you have 3 meals a day, you afford to do 1 or 2 things. So it is averaging 9,300, somewhere there, 9,200 to 9,300. Meaning a family of 5, for them to survive in Lusaka, just a family of 5, they need over 9,000 kwacha. Meaning the cost of living has gone up. The national average, you need about 6,400. But remember, this is way above the average income of most people, because most of the people's income range between 4,500 to 6,000. So what the JCTR is saying is that the cost of living has gone up, and yes, we've seen it also reflected in the annual inflation rate, which we've seen slightly move from where it was 9.8 to now 10.3%. We saw a movement of 0.5% when it comes to that. So for me, I always emphasize when I come on the program that we wish the UPND administration all the best, even as they lead this country. Remember, if UPND administration fails, we have all failed. If you are a presidential aspirant, aspiring to be a leader, and you're praying that the UPND should fail, then you will not make a good leader, because when you take over, you will find things are bad, and for you to recover, it will take quite some time. Even the impact of the things you'll be doing will not be felt. So if anything, let's support UPND to ensure they don't fail, so that even when the next president takes over, the president of your choice takes over, at least they'll find things are in order and they can pick it up from there. But when they find things are in a mess, trust me, all the efforts that will be put in to ensure that things work will seem as if it's not working, because the other administration has failed. Moving on, also yesterday, the Anti-Corruption Commission says it is evaluating requests of some Ministry of Finance officials who are requesting to pay illegally obtained funds. SEC earlier this year arrested 20 officials at the Ministry of Finance and National Planning for making payments to facilitate activities and theft of public funds. Head Corporate Communications at ACC, Timothy Mono, says the Commission has been analyzing the request and may grant them in accordance with Section 80 of the Anti-Corruption Act number 3 of 2012. However, Mr. Mono says the officials have obligations to meet, such as providing a voluntary and full disclosure of the illegally obtained funds. Remember, just some few months ago, SEC did announce that about 20 officials from the Ministry of Finance were arrested because they obtained money that they were not supposed to. They paid themselves allowances that they attended this meeting, I went here, when in fact they did not. So these officials say they are willing to pay back whatever they obtained, but on condition, now SEC has given them a condition that they disclose in full what they obtained from the Zambian people. Of course, those resources, remember, were supposed to be made to improve, or rather function in one way or the other in the Zambian economy, but instead they ended up in the pocket of people who pretended to have undertaken certain programs and paid themselves financing, which was not the case. So yesterday the SEC did give an update, their quarterly update, and that was one of the aspects that came out in the news yesterday. So let us zoom in and see what the Anti-Corruption Commission was saying.
The Anti-Corruption Commission ACC has disclosed that it is investigating 135 cases out of the reported 294 cases which were approved to have made it. ACC Head Corporate Communications Timothy Mono, speaking during a second quarter press briefing in Lusaka, disclosed that during the period under review, the Commission also received one case of corruption from the Financial Intelligence Center, FIC, making the cases 5 in total.
The Commission recorded 10 arrests countrywide in the last quarter. And this brings the total number of all those that have been arrested to 38 so far since January. The Commission also recorded 8 convictions and 1 acquittal.
Following the crackdown at the Ministry of Finance and National Planning, which led to the arrest of 20 officials, Mr. Mono said the Commission is exploring options in the matter.
You may wish to note that the Commission has been receiving requests from some of the Ministry of Finance officials to pay back their illegally obtained funds. The Commission has been analyzing these requests and may grant them in accordance with Section 80 of the Anti-Corruption Act No. 3 of 2012. Please note, there is nothing sinister about allowing officials to pay back the funds, and as this is provided for in the law. However, the said officials have obligations to meet, such as providing a voluntary and true disclosure of the illegalities involved in the obtaining of funds.
The crackdown at the ministry included the arrest of Permanent Secretary Mr. Mukuli Chikuba, charged with multiple offences involving over 2 million kwacha, and Director of Internal Audit Francis Ngwenya, charged with abuse of authority of office with failure to allow applicable procedure and obtaining money by false pretenses involving more than 1 million kwacha in form of allowances. Meanwhile, ACC has welcomed President Hakainde Hichilema's decision to remove from office former Wapura Province Minister Derek Chirundika and the arrest of everyone involved in the illegal mining of sojilite. The Commission has since reiterated the call to members of the public to be key players in the fight against corruption. For Camnet News, Afias Kaptula in Lusaka.
There you have it, one of the stories that made headline in our news yesterday. Anti-Corruption Commission evaluating requests by some officials from the Ministry of Finance who have indicated that they will pay back. They want to pay back resources that they obtained by false pretense, by alleging that they had undertaken certain activities, paid themselves resources, but that was not the case. So this came to light, when the ministry was audited, and these were some of the findings. And these officials are saying we are willing to pay back. They don't want to call the court, where that process takes a lot of time and makes the government also lose out on a lot of resources. So now they are saying don't go the court where we are willing to pay back. Just let us know how much we are supposed to pay back. But ACC says we can only allow you to pay back if you fully disclose how much you got. Then also we did see Mr. Chukuli, who is the former Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, is arrested and will appear in court over charges that amount to 2 million kwacha. So that was one of the stories also that made headline in our news yesterday, apart from the fact that the country's inflation rate surged to 10.3%, the highest in over 13 months. Then also yesterday, the Department of National Park has successfully mitigated the human-wildlife conflict experienced in Machaya area of Umpongwe last week, when a sub-adult male lion found itself in the area killing 4 heads of cattle. The department, with the support of honorary wildlife police officers and RITHRA, a conservation non-government organizations working in Kafiwe ecosystem, swiftly responded to a distress call of a reported stray lion that was in the area and preying on livestock on farms. The operation cost is estimated at 30,000 kwacha. So remember, whenever there is animal-human conflict, there is resources that is involved, because you find that sometimes wildlife authorities have to camp in a particular place. They need to protect themselves. They need, to buy the equipment to ensure that the animal also is not endangered, because there are certain times that calls for, situations where you can't secure the animal. You have to kill it. So sometimes that is what they try to avoid, even as they are trying to protect wildlife as well as human. But they did conduct an operation, and the operation was successful. So that story made headline in our news yesterday. The people of Umpongwe, be assured that you are safe, but you don't move in the night. Come back home on time. I know there was a lot of fear of moving in the night because you might become a prey to an animal before you know it. You remember there is an incident of a councillor in one of these areas, I don't know if you heard that news, who was actually eaten by lions when he was coming from one of the ward development committee meetings. Very unfortunate situation, which should never happen in a country like Zambia. This is just a councillor who was working to improve the lives of his people in the village. So when he was coming back from that ward development committee meeting that ended late, going to his village, unfortunately, he found himself in the hands of the lions, and it became a meal. That is an unfortunate incident, very sad in a country like Zambia. So yesterday, the Wildlife Authority in Mpongo moved in before a life can be lost, and this lion was retrieved, and it is being taken to a safer place. Let's see the story that made headline in our news yesterday.
No, let them take the single cable. So the cage is too long. So they use a single cable. Double cable follow with double
I have a very small stand. We continue having cases of human-wildlife conflicts, and the most recent one is the case we are just dealing with now, where a lion found itself in Machia of Mpongwe district. It was a struggle, but we managed to capture the lion, which found itself in the community, threatening the life of livestock and also that of humans. That also includes threatening, the life of itself, wildlife. We stand for conservation, and we successfully managed to capture this lion alive and brought it to the Kafue National Park, where we feel when it is released, to have a better chance of survival.
There are many ecological considerations that we did before the translocation of the animal, and we are sure that where we are taking it will have a chance of survival, unlike it being in the community.
There you have it. Department of National Park has successfully mitigated the human-wildlife conflict experienced in Machia area of Mpongwe last week, when a sub-adult male lion found itself in the area, killing 4 heads of cattle. We just appreciate our men in uniform. There are also men in uniform and other stakeholders who came on board to help retrieve that animal before it could prey on human. I was watching one time a documentary on National Geographic where there was animal conflict. A village came in conflict with lions. And one thing I learned in that documentary is that once these lions taste animal meat, they taste human meat, they become addicted to it. Sometimes humans, the way we are made, when you're attacked by a lion, it's easy for the lion to kill you. There's no much struggle because it overpowers you, compared to, these big animals like a bull, a cow. Sometimes they do fight back, the buffaloes and stuff. So this documentary was saying when these animals taste human flesh, when they prey on human, they become addicted to the meat, to an extent where even if there is an animal there and a human, the lion would rather attack a human than an animal. So we are just excited that before this would happen in the Mpongo area, the Wildlife Authority moved in and they were able to retrieve this lion. It had, of course, killed 4 heads of cattle. It is a loss to this farmer because 4 heads of cattle, that's, that could be someone's capital. If 1 head of cattle is going at 5,000, 8,000, this person would have lost about 20,000 or 30,000 or even 40,000, because I've seen some bulls that go as far as 10,000, 15,000 selling. So it is an unfortunate situation, but we are glad that the Wildlife Authority from the Department of National Parks and others, that is the Panthre House, did move in, and of course they have mitigated that animal-wildlife, or rather animal-human conflict that was happening in Mpongwe. So kudos, we appreciate, and this information we are giving you to the people of Mpongwe to ensure that now you can move freely, those fears that you had, but please don't come back late. Make sure you come back on time from wherever you are, working places, from your farms, and stuff like that. Then also, the Zambia Institute of Policy Analysis and Research, ZIPA, says it has noted a number of challenges in the implementation of the Constituency Development Fund, CDF, through a research it conducted in 12 districts of Zambia in 2022. So ZIPA last year, remember ZIPA is an institution that is tasked to do research on behalf of the country. So working with the German government, they did go in 12 districts of 6 provinces in Zambia to do a research on how CDF is being implemented. And yesterday, they were giving the findings of some of that report together with the people they are working with, what they found. And they found a number of challenges, and the ZIPA Executive Director, Dr. Eric Mpoko, says the challenges stem from process inefficiencies, bottlenecks in the application and reviewing process, weak governance and coordination system, and inadequate share of resources to critical implementers such as the World Development Committee and CDF Committee. This is a very important aspect when it comes to know, you are a bank. Like, for example, if banks were functioning that they just keep money for people and not make profit, there was no way we are going to be having banks even anywhere. The reason why banks sometimes are there to exist is because they want to make profit. But what has been happening with the World Development Committees, this committee will form. Imagine they are the ones who deliberate and budget on CDF, but they gain nothing from it. There is no where it is stipulated that the World Development Committee will gain this. Even in monitoring of this CDF project, how would the World Development Committee monitor if at all they don't have the resources? So here is me, an ordinary person, who's the World Development Committee member. I have to be using my own resources to monitor CDF implementation. It doesn't work like that. That's why in most areas, you find that the World Development Committee just end up in meeting, deliberate on what they want to see, but they don't monitor these projects. So ZIPA yesterday did make, these submissions on the challenges that they faced in efficient bottlenecks in the application and reviewing process. I know there are some complaints that have come forth that the application process is quite complicated, especially for those who do bursaries and loans. And sometimes people can't even write a business proposal. You've been told, go and form a group and write a business proposal. So there are some of those bottlenecks that have been observed, weak governance and coordination system. There's no that real coordination. And if you've been following Camnet TV, we've covered quite a number of stories of what has been the outcome of some of these projects being implemented. So now, yesterday they did make also some recommendations to the government, which we covered, and these will also improve on how CDF is being implemented in the country. So what am I talking about? Let's zoom into this story that made headline in our news yesterday. The Zambia Institute of Policy Analysis and Research, ZIPA, working together with the Local Governance Impact and DAI under the USAID Local Governance Project, undertook a comprehensive study on the Constituency Development Fund CDF monitoring process in 2022. From the study, 12 districts in 6 provinces were surveyed to fully understand the dynamics of the CDF processes and the challenges being faced. ZIPA Executive Director Dr. Eric Mpoko, who spoke at the report dissemination workshop on mobilizing investment for climate-compatible growth through Zambia's constituency development funds, has highlighted some of the challenges observed.
We recognize through our research that there are challenges which stem from process inefficiencies, bottlenecks in the application and reviewing process, weak governance and coordination systems, and inadequate share of resources to critical implementers such as the World Development Committees and CDF committees. The reports covered by the media on the CDF have been wide. We have made, for instance, aware of the challenges faced by the people of the long distance needed to become traveled to access application forms for the for councils. We also see CDF funds being dispersed late, causing critical community projects to stall.
The Centre has since made several recommendations to the Zambian government on how CDF implementation can be improved.
One, that we need to strengthen the institutional people and regulatory framework for CDF to make it more efficient and responsive to community needs. Second, we propose that there should be enhancement of the capacity of local communities to process CDF applications and monitor implementation, and also establish a CDF unit in the local authority. Additionally, the government must consider allocating funds to ward development committees to enable them to carry out their roles effectively. Furthermore, government should consider decentralized institutions such as background and the direct to bring their services closer to the people.
Meanwhile, British Deputy High Commissioner to Zambia, Samuel Woodcock, says findings of the CDF report will aid his government in moving forward to inform the decision-making.
And what we're doing is improving access to information. We're also developing a dashboard around CDF to track progress, all with the idea of improving these feedback loops where we have a better understanding of what's happening, citizens are more involved, and we make sure that the money we're spending is as effective as possible.
And Lusaka Mayor Chilando Chitangala, who was represented by independent Ward 17 Councillor Emmanuel Madiankuku, says sub-Saharan African cities need significantly increased investment for climate change adaptation and access to sustainable energy.
Accelerating climate finance is critical to support large-scale investments required to adopt measures to significantly reduce emissions and mitigate adverse effects of climate change.
Prudence Chota, reporting for Camnet TV News.
Ex-inmates are usually looked down in society as members of the public perceive them as wrongdoers who are unreformed. With passion to change the status quo, Paul Chirwa of Lusaka formed a cooperative to support ex-inmates, which has since received government's recognition.
How long I've been going to the prison to do the motivations to help. It is just something that has been in me. Through our church where I go, it happened that I have seen that more church go into prison, more organizations go into prison. But when those prisoners come out of the prison, there's no one who has helped them. No one receives them from outside. Even the churches that go into prison, even myself, when I have been going to the prison, when those ex-prisoners come, I'm not found. And they become more desperate.
Mr. Chirwa has urged members of the public to avoid looking down at ex-inmates as they undergo reformation in correctional facilities.
They tend to be rejected, but they are very innocent. So what we want is the society free in thinking that all ex-prisoners are bad people. They are not bad. They are human beings like you and me. In fact, some of us, we are more weak than them. Imagine someone was accused but he didn't do anything. He happened to go to prison. You yourself, you've committed a crime but you have not gone to prison. So there are people that are outside prison but they are bad. But there are people who are in prison but
James Tembo is one of the beneficiaries of his initiative, Zambia Ex-Prisoners Cooperative, ZAMEP, now working as a driver and has urged fellow ex-inmates to be faithful when given such opportunities.
With me, I'm a driver, I'm a mechanic, purchasing officer, I do a lot of things. So for that, I say, even those who may be stuck or maybe looking forward for help, they should go through the same channel. But my main emphasis is that they need to be also faithful, because once you misbehave, then you broke the opportunity of other people. So even those maybe who are in prison, they may be wondering, because as I was also wondering to say, if I come out, what is it that I can do? Because I'm totally condemned. But I thank God that I've found people who helped me to be where I am.
With hundreds of inmates being released every day, such initiatives are therefore encouraged to further provide safe landing to individuals seeking integration in society and curtail reoffending. For Camnet News, Afias Kaptula in Lusaka.
There you have it, another one of our stories that made headline in our news yesterday. Very important. You know, when someone has been incarcerated for an offense, it doesn't matter how grave the offense might have been. What our colleagues are advocating for is, can they please fit in society? You know, sometimes the rejection will prompt them to go back and commit crime, because they feel, you know, where you just feel rejected, or you just feel you're not part of society. So how is it that you're going to cope? They go back to doing the wrong things that ended them in prison. So let's be a brother's keeper. When someone comes back, they are not enemies. The reason why they go to prisons is just simply because we want to transform them. So prison is meant for transformation, not to create now a savage. We've seen sometimes when people come from prison, they become savages, but sometimes maybe it is because of the rejection that they feel. So that was one of the stories that made headline in our news yesterday. The one we just saw, we zoomed in before I came back on set, but here I am back on set, your host, Prudence Chota. We dive now into our conversation this morning. Remember, this particular program has been paid for. It is a paid for program by the Federation of Small-Scale Miners in Zambia. So between last month and this month, we will be talking about mining. We want to exhaust everything that is in the mining sector to see how best we can improve this particular sector. Actually, yesterday I did have also a conversation with the Zambia Statistical Agency interim statistician general, Mr. Mlenga Msepa. You know, his name really confused us. And one of the things he mentioned was that I was asked him a question to say, you know, you are indicating that we've recorded a trade surplus of about 0.9 billion kwacha. Why is it that we are recording trade surpluses when we are saying the country is not exporting more than we can, which is contributing, for example, to the depreciation of the kwacha and stuff like that? And the one thing he mentioned was, if today we were to remove copper, figures, copper, from what we export, we would be actually moving in the negatives, because the only thing that we usually export out of the country are minerals, which are mostly comprising of copper. So if today we said, okay, from these figures, let's move copper, and we give you the figures of how much you export, we will actually be in deficits. We would be in the negatives, because the export of other things is equally zero. But remember, the mining sector is bigger than copper. Supposing we removed copper, and we have the export of sugilite, the export of lithium, the export of uranium, you will actually be interested to know that we have lithium and uranium in Zambia. If we did give those figures, what do we have? It is a sad scenario. That's why we want to talk about these issues, to see how is it that we can improve the mining sector, especially for small-scale miners, because these ones are very important in our economy. And through small-scale miners, actually, Zambia can be a transformative country, but there are some things that have been hindering us as a country from progressing. So this morning also, allow me to welcome back Mr. Victor Kalesha, who is, of course, a member of the Federation of Small-Scale Miners, but he is also the president of the Emeralds and Precious Minerals Association of Zambia. Sir, good morning.
Good morning, thank you, Prudence.
It's good to have you back on set this week, where we continue to digest on this particular topic. Usually when it comes to mining in Zambia, especially for small-scale miners. I know last week we had a wonderful conversation, and this week we hope to exhaust some of the questions that we did not finish last week. So when we discussed last week, we talked about some of the challenges that your sector faces, and how is it that we can mitigate some of those challenges. And we also did have some callers who alluded to the fact that they have even done, the programs that have to do with cleaning of these metals, value addition and stuff like that, but there is literally no support that is coming from them. So moving on this week, we are going to talk a little bit about policies and also the aspects that have to do with cooperatives. So this morning we are discussing, do cooperative models work in the mining sector? But before we go to that, Mr. Kalesha, the current policies being formulated by the government in the mining sectors, are they in favor of small-scale miners? Do they speak to the needs of artisanal miners in the country? I know, I think a few months ago, or if not last year, I think I remember attending that meeting where we had that policy document being launched by government through the Minister of Mines and Natural Resources in Lusaka at Molongoshi Conference Center there. And I know there are other policies they are saying they are formulating, for example, in the area of lithium and sugilite. But the policies that we have, and looking at that document which was launched, do the policies speak to improving, or do they favor the small-scale miners in Zambia?
Thank you so much, Prudence. And I think I'm sitting in for Madam Luvemba, was supposed to be here, but she's not feeling too well. So the President Federation felt, since I was in Lusaka, I should still come back here and continue where we left out last week. Policies, we've been advocating as small-scale miners. Quite all right, country is run by policies and, which drives sectors into motion. But as small-scale miners, we feel sometimes certain policies do not favor us because we are powered together in, with those that have already, maybe for lack of a better term, those that have already made it, and we just put into there as a sector, and we find it very difficult sometimes to operate because of certain policies. And if we talk about the very natural ones, like policies in terms of taxes, we find ourselves as a beginner where you are taught to pay certain taxes when you export. There is VAT, there is mineral royalty, there is presumptive tax. So all these, we fail to do our businesses in long term. In a long time now, we've been advocating, which I feel actually like for the taxes has been responded to, although they are not in implementation yet, or it's that we wanted to have a separate tax regime as small-scale miners. So, and many more other things like artisanal small-scale miners. When you're applying for a license, let there be certain laws flexed so that we have a villager who wants to apply for a small-scale or artisanal small-scale, have access easily, where even a child from his home who's doing some school somewhere will be able to read and say, we are able to do that. We just do this, name and what the area they are operating from. So some policies do not speak to what the artisanal small-scale miner is doing.
I know you've talked a little bit about some of the suggestions that you would want to make. Among them, the issue of mineral royalties, the issue of VAT being treated like everyone in the mining sector. So if you were to make suggestions of what you want to see in these documents that are being formulated, apart from the aspect where you've talked about, we want to have our own tax base as small-scale miners, what are some of the things also that government should consider to add in these policies?
It's broad. That's why, I would just say what we feel is there are certain things that obviously government means well, and they wouldn't make policies that are meant to injure us, but we need engagement where we have a win-win situation. Government needs to collect their taxes so that a civil servant or the country runs, so to say. But we need engagement so that we speak to each other and say, this doesn't seem to be favorable to us. So I would only say we would need engagement, and then we would be able to come up, look at the whole policies that in regard to the small-scale mining or mining in particular, and then we separate and say these are not favorable, these are good, these are, and we'll move forward that way.
Cooperative model. I know this aspect since the UPND administration introduced the CDF, that is a Constituency Development Fund. We've seen cooperative model being used more than any other model in the country, where they say, if you have to undertake a business, go and form a group, register your business, come together, put resources together, apply, get resources, get financed, and let's begin to do, business. When you have these cooperative models, there's a lot that you can achieve. They say when you go alone, you go far. But if you want to go further, you go as a group. The cooperative model, let's go to today's topic. In the mining sector, does this model work for artisanal mining? The cooperative model, does it work for artisanal mining? I know there are some of the persons that will be coming, what we are making reference to, but as it stands from the experience that you've had in your sector, does this work?
Yeah, thank you so much, Prudence. I think I'm privileged that as a keen follower of the running of the country, I've been following from the first republic, the first president. When there was emerald deposits found in Lufwanyama, Dr. Kaunda, the first thing he did was to tell Zambians to go and form cooperatives and apply for mining rights in Lufwanyama, and actually it spread over to many other areas where they taught people to go and form cooperatives so that they are given mining rights. I think it's the best also model for a country because it embraces everyone. I know even currently government is telling people to form cooperatives, especially in areas where we found gold in Mpika, in other areas. Form cooperatives, then we'll give you mining rights. So I think it's a model that encompasses everyone, and also it helps formalization of people that are not formalized. So many people are operating illegally because you find in an area, like even in Pika, because I even went there personally, you find this person is digging there alone, this one is digging there, this one. But if they form cooperatives and government is involved as it is, where they've taught people form cooperatives, then we'll give you artisanal small-scale mining rights. I think it's a model that is well received, and I think it's a workable solution to formalizing the mining sector.
I know you've already spoken to the fact that government has encouraged, especially these sectors. I was also coming to that. We did see the Minister of Mines and Minerals Development announce that about 100 cooperatives have so far been formed, and he was saying part of these cooperatives will be empowered with, equipment and machinery and stuff like that, so that they can go in the mining of minerals such as gold. So as an organization, are you aware of some of these cooperatives that have been formed?
Yeah, I would say yes, because we like I said, I've been to Mpika. When we heard there was, as a federation, it's our job to really find out, to go on a fact-finding mission. We are currently on the Shujilite, finding out what is happening, why is it that this now has become like a legal trade, and we have fact-finding. We went to Mpika to see what is going on the ground, and we found thousands and thousands of people operating individually as a group. And when we consulted with government, I remember me and President Kabusu having a meeting with the Minister of Mines in his office, and he says, I think as federation you need to help us to tell people to form cooperatives so that we capture all the mineral resources that we have in this country that people are doing. So we are aware, and we, like even as yet yesterday, we had a conversation with the Director of Mines, who told us, yes, this we have moved. There are cooperatives that have been formed, and very soon they will be launching those cooperatives, especially in the gold areas. They've bought some equipment because one of the major problems is equipment, and it got, if you have no detector, you have no God picker, you are not able to make it. So they've bought these already as government, and they'll be giving out to some of these cooperatives that have been formed. So yes, we are aware with some of these cooperatives formed. We'll be moving into there when they are given mining rights, so that we have them as our members.
Wow, I was even about to ask to say, do you have some of your members who have also joined these cooperatives, or you're just hearing that cooperatives are there?
We already have some cooperatives already registered way back, but I think the model our government is using in this particular one in Pika is that they want the local people to be empowered. So people that have formed cooperatives in partnership with the local people there, I think they are the ones that will be given a priority into getting these mining rights. And I'm actually the chairperson for the organizing committee to recruit more membership. So immediately they give them the cooperatives will move in as a federation to go and get how many of them they have been given the mining rights, and then involve them so that we are the mouthpiece. They won't, if they said 100 cooperatives have been formed, the 100 of them won't be going to government to speak on their own in terms of certain things that will be affecting them. They have to speak through the federation. So as a federation, we'll move in and capture their, put them in our database and start helping them out as a mouthpiece for them.
Interested there. Vampika, this morning we want to hear from you. Have you been selected among those who formed cooperatives to benefit from the gold that you've actually discovered in your area? I actually stayed in Pika for quite some time. Yes, and I remember when they just degazetted that land, Pika Tanov. There is that just land which is behind there, and I remember when they just degazetted that land for plots, and my parents were even among the first people to get land from there. And I'm just thinking, if I was in Mpika by now, I think even that land that I'm talking about, that at one particular point, of course, we had to sell, perhaps can also be, you know, a gold zone. So we are rich in this country, so we can love to hear from people from Mpika and of course Northwestern Province. I know there's also gold there. Those who are forming cooperatives, how is it going for you? What challenges are you facing in the formulation of these cooperatives to participate in the minerals of this country? You can be part of the conversation by calling the numbers that are on the screen, and let us hear how this experience has been for you. Also talking about cooperatives, do we have examples of some of these cooperatives that are flourishing in the country, where we have, you know, a cooperative that owns this particular mine and it is performing A, B, C, D? Do we have examples of such cooperatives?
Yes, I would say yes, and I may not have them at the fingertips, but I would give an example of where I'm coming from in Lufwanyama. When there was the model of cooperatives, and I think this is the model that the New Dawn government has adopted, which is a good model to tell people to form cooperatives, because it makes people work as one in unity, and you know, also everybody getting involved. In Lufwanyama, when Dr. Kaunda taught people to form cooperatives, we hear, even if you see the history of the emerald industry, you hear the productive mines and what, there is Pilara Cooperative. It was a cooperative then, where Grizzly sits actually, it was Pilara Cooperative. And it was a model that worked so well. Unfortunately, with the other more cooperatives, there is Twampane Cooperative, it worked out so well, but unfortunately, in our country, and this is one thing that we need to change. I'm glad we are speaking about the Mpika thing. Cooperatives will come, people will produce the gold, but if we continue doing the hand to mouth, where everything that you get, you want to chew, and we won't get anywhere. The cooperatives worked out so well, and people were producing emeralds, but unfortunately, they never reinvested back. I want to tell you, Prudence, that if people had learnt the model of reinvesting into their projects, by now the emerald sector could have been flourishing because people were producing then, but because everything they got was not utilized to put in equipment, and today we are crying about equipment. So we have learned lessons. So I'm hoping that the people in Impika that will be given those cooperatives, because I was told by the director it's soon, they'll they'll launch that, give equipment, and God is there. You are talking about being in Impika. They are discovered, even yesterday I've got people from Impika right now who are in Lusaka. They have discovered other new areas where there is God.
Wow.
Okay? And the people that were in Kanyelele, in Impika, most of them have moved to that other area. And like you're saying, we want to work with government to help them. We speak the same language with these people. When government goes there, they will run away thinking they've come to arrest us. But when we go there, we'll speak to them. Look, let's formalize. Let's register with government. Let's get our mining rights. This morning we'll be having a meeting with the director, Cadastre, when I just leave here. We're going to talk about, simplifying the way people, when they apply for a mining rights, let them simplify how the information that people, so that they are not running away, they are not afraid. Most of these people that I've discovered last week, we spoke about it, these minerals are just ordinary people, villagers, some of them not even been to school, who are supposed to be heroes. But when you tell them apply, he doesn't even know how to write his name, and you want him to apply with a template that is very difficult. So we'll speak that, can you, simplify some of these things so that people are not afraid, they are not running away from registering or formalizing their operations.
Quite interesting there. I'm excited, Rampik. Another area, discovered God. I think I'm going back to my roots.
I'm going with you. I'm going with you so that I see. It's interesting where Ghana has gotten where it is because of God. It's one of the major drivers of their economy. It's God, and this is part of the model that our government wants to take, where they capture all the God from the cooperatives. When they produce, they have to sell to this marketing center which government will establish. So, the areas in Impika, I won't be surprised when you tell me, first let's go visit your village, pick up some samples and see. Because when I went
I think so. I grew up in Impika, and there where the Zambia breweries, just the house that is opposite in Chitulika, there where Basata, there's even a place called Basata. Actually, Basata was my neighbor in Impika, yes. That's where our house is, and it's still our house, yes, except when we relocated, one of my cousins is the one who's occupied that. And of course, when you go, as if you're going to, Kavinga, that area, that's where my village is. And in 2016, I think that's the last time I was there to do some agriculture there. I started wondering why we've been seeing this influx of, I'm not going to mention the nationality, yes, have been settling in that place, setting up milling plants, setting up this. So I started wondering that, what is happening here? And, Impika is rich. It has got, now God, and we've got the God that comes with the caterpillars in November this year. Yeah. Very rich, place. That very rich caterpillars that are there, and now God. So it's quite interesting. I think I'm going back to my roots. Yeah. We like Akalale too much in Lusaka. I imagine if I was in Impika by now, I could have been a cooperative member. But you two can let us know, if you are in Impika, how is this formulation of the cooperatives that has been announced by the government? How are you being part of it?
Also, not just, forming cooperatives. This country, like you said, is very rich. And most of it has not been mapped yet. So I would like to encourage you. I know now even in villages, people have got TV, they are watching, even right now, some of them. I encourage people, when you find something that is looking unusual, a stone or anything, muchanga uleweka, pick them up, and if you have relatives, bring them to the geological survey. They do the testing, then they tell you what is there. Because in most areas, there are minerals, but you don't know what are these. So you find people, Zambians should know that it's their country, and if you pick up in your village, like you're talking your neighbor to Chitulika, If they pick up anything, just pick them up and samples, bring them to University of Zambia, School of Mines. They do the testing, geological survey, they test and they find their minerals. You are the owners of the village, and you know you already have the land rights. Then apply for the mineral rights and double double.
I think that's why we're talking about this. You know, abantu kana ishiba, lack of knowing to say you can actually, if you discover it, you can actually be the owner of that particular place by just applying for mineral rights. But anyway, that's why we brought you this program where we are discussing these important aspects of what is happening in the mining sector. Zambia is rich. When we say rich, we mean we are rich with minerals. And this also just reminds me, you know, when we used to stay in Impika, we had this certain person who was our garden boy. And after some time, he disappeared. And when he came back, the man came back with the, you know, quite substantial amount of money. We could see he bought 2 cars. I don't know, one time when Dad sat him down to question him, he said, no, I've actually moved into this aspect of, you know, where we are buying stones and selling. And there's just a particular place in Impika. And now, when you talk about in Impika, that's when I'm now having this map popping, where you would go and they would buy these minerals, and there were people who were coming to buy. I'm just not sure if he had the license by then, but I know that he was trading in the aspect of, you know, minerals. And he became big-headed because he became the big thing in the village. And when he moved, this is just a person who was just a garden boy, but at least he was lucky. He met someone who introduced him to this. And I remember at one particular time I saw these very beautiful stones that he once came with, because he was showing a sample of the things that he did. But I was young, I was quite young by then, and you know, I couldn't see really the importance of this thing. But then we've just come to realize Zambia is a country rich with mineral resources. Being a woman myself, and women participation in this male-dominated sector, are there opportunities for them to flourish?
Very much. Actually, I'll tell you the truth. I'm glad you asked that question. In the last Africa Gemstone and Jewelry conference that we had in Ndola, we discovered that in that conference there were more women that were actually in value addition. And I remember Mr. Festus Musonda saying, why is it that there is only now women, can you involve us as men? So, you know, President Kabuswe, Joseph, who said, you know what, if we look even in the Bible, women are always dominating, because even when Jesus was being, when he resurrected, the women were the first one to get to the tomb. So yes, there is 100% women. When you are doing something, you do it with passion, and as long as it is something that will give you resource. Look at in the markets, because markets are not meant for women as per se. It's a business, but the dominance is by the women. So in this sector, I encourage actually women out there to create interest and join into, if it means forming cooperatives, even the cooperatives they are saying in Impika, they are forming cooperatives for God and what. Let women also form cooperatives and say, this is our mine as women. You can become their chairperson and tell them, if you have relatives in Impika, tell them, form a cooperative, we'll apply for mining rights, because it's open. The government is not saying we just want to give certain particular individuals what they are saying, anyone, because they want the Zambians to benefit. So we are making it women in mining, yes, 100% they can. And actually, I believe women do much better when they get into this business, better than even men.
The minerals won't disappear. We hear when a woman steps on a mine, the minerals disappear.
that was you know, I don't know where that was even coming from. They made women believe that, no, when you get, we saw it very much in the Emerald area. I think in other areas, when women step into the area where there are minerals, then there will be less production. In Lufanyama, we've had mines like there was the late Mary Chisala. She was owning a mine, an emerald mine, and she would be at the pit and they are producing. We have Gentina mine in Lufanyama, where there is Mrs. Mukwala, who is the director there. The mine is productive. So this issue about it's a belief that we shouldn't even entertain. God did not make minerals, put minerals in the ground and said it's for men and women should not be there. I think there could have been some people that created that and wanted women not to be found at the mine. So there are certain beliefs that just people put, you don't beliefs that, no, ngapa mkulu, they shumfile mwa ipa hapo echa mulopa and what? Iwantuwa umfile fe nkasha and they felt, they can kill an animal. So it's not true that when women come to the mining sites or mining areas, there will be no minerals. Mrs. Mary, remember, the one who was supposed to be here, is running a very successful mine in Mapatiza, I think in Kalomo. Very productive. Mrs. Mundia Pauline, she's running a mine productive. Namakau Kaingu, the current president for the Federation for Small Scale Mining, she's running a mine and it is productive. So that is just a narrative that is trying to discourage women. Get encouraged and go for it.
I think I know that there is a name that rings a bell on my mind that I know from the Copper Belt. I don't know her full name, but actually she's even my relative. Vamela.
Chibumba.
I don't know if that's the name, but Vamela, the name sounds familiar. I know she's been doing mining for quite some time, and she's one of those examples of success in emerald mining in Lufanyama. But had all these taboos where women have been kept away from, just coming forth and taking over this sector. But we are excited that we are having these conversations where we are inspiring even you as a woman to know that you can flourish in this male-dominated sector. We too can be part of the development by going where they say don't go. Let's go. And we can take up that challenge. The government in May this year stopped issuing licenses for lithium and sugilite mining until further notice. Should these licenses be strictly reserved for local people? I know we talked a little bit about sugilite last week, but we've also seen the aspect of lithium coming into play. Okay, let's talk even just a little bit about lithium before we even talk about, the licenses and who it should be given to. Lithium in this country, which particular areas do we find lithium? And usually, what is it used for?
Although I'm more conversant with the gemstones, but I think lithium is found in southern province. We have it in some areas on the Copper Belt Northwestern. I think it's actually dotted in quite a number of countries, provinces. Like we said, this country is rich, and where you don't expect you would find in southern provinces, the least province we thought would find minerals like lithium. So I think it's all over the country. Not conversant with it, but it's a metal that is used. Is it that they are saying also when you use it with manganese and you do the the electrical vehicles thing?
Yeah. It is part of what has been mentioned. I'm sure that's why even government put a stop to mining of lithium. And now they are saying lithium and sugilite. I know, the aspect of the car batteries when it comes to lithium has come with its own aspect of, we want to bring investors in this particular sector. Who is Zambia going to partner with to come up with these ideas of producing these electric batteries and stuff like that? But lithium, sugilite, and some of the minerals we are discovering going forward, should we go the investor way?
I personally, not that we don't like investors. We've had investors in the past, quite a number of them, and the only thing that have come out of the investor way is that they have been disadvantaging us. They haven't been compliant in certain things. They've been declaring and what. So in my view, personally, I think this is the time that Africa, I want to mention Africa so that we put it broad, not only Zambia, because other countries are doing it. I think we need to start taking our challenges and take on these operations ourselves as Zambians. Well, the only thing that an investor brings in is money, and sometimes use your own things locally, and then they start taking away these minerals. We have a couple of Zambians, a lot of Zambians that have got the money. And I think I would want to encourage Zambians, let's not keep our monies into the banks and no, this I've got so much, he's got so much money. Let's invest, let's take a risk. Any business is a risk. Take a risk, invest it into productive ventures. As for me, when we have discovered minerals, there is no need to go the investor way. We've got very well qualified mining engineers, geologists from the University of Zambia, and we have every year producing these graduation ceremonies for these graduates. I know of mining engineers that are in other countries outside Zambia that have been employed, and they are working in other countries as geologists, as mining engineers. So we have the personnel that are able to run these resources. We have people that we are running ZCCM. We have Professor Chileshe, Peter Chileshe now with the Copperbelt University. We have the Sixtus Mulengas of this world running a manganese mine as a Zambian. That's an example of the few other things that we can do. Why go look for investors, a resource that you've already discovered? You know, I think it's high time that government now started owning some of these investments. What is ZCCM IH doing? Why not get that and run it 100% as a Zambian run operation, so that we are actually internalizing the resources? So the investor way for me is not something that I encourage. Actually, even when we borrow some of these monies, let's invest them into mining as 100% by Zambians, because when we produce and 100% profits are coming to you as a country, it's easy for you to pay back those loans.
The loans we owe.
Yeah.
The kind of investment that we really need to grow the sector for small-scale miners. I know you've talked about let's not go, always the investor way. But we are also trying to talk about how we can grow these small-scale miners. I know there are people who've been small-scale miners for years.
Like me.
Yeah. So if we are to grow this sector so that we have people, for example, graduating or maturing from small-scale, at least to even medium miners, what investment do we really need?
Prudence, I'll tell you, if we would, if government would really create interest and say, let's work with these small-scale miners, the way they are doing with the gold mines, and if they would come and say, let's invest seriously into some of these Zambian-owned small-scale mining, graduation will definitely come. Because if you don't send your child who was nothing coming from secondary school, you don't take them into university and pay for them, they'll never graduate as a graduate, as a doctor, as an engineer. It's the same with us. Small scale, we have no equipment, we have no resources, we have no proper information to geological information. We will remain small scale. But if government would come in and say, let's fill in these gaps that have been missing, which we are talking about actually, like I'll refer again, we had a meeting yesterday with the director mines, and they are keen to try and see how do we help these small scale miners. We've been talking about the amalgamation of the emerald area, so we can only graduate when we are given certain things. I'm happy the model they are using with the artisanal small scale in gold. They've already bought the gold pickers, the gold testers. So when they launch and say, these are the cooperatives we are now starting up with, they won't just tell them, go, we have given you artisanal. They will give them the equipment that they need. And I'll tell you, there will be success in that operation because government has done the basics that this artisanal small-scale miner or cooperative needs to start up with.
I know when we talked about the aspect of cooperatives and the aspect of investment, where in the past it was hand to mouth, whatever you make, you eat instead of investing it. And now here we have government saying they formed cooperatives, they'll be giving them equipment. Do these cooperatives need to be trained in how they are supposed to mine or handle the minerals or handle the finances? Where do we have the problem? Is it that, you know, even just now, you can buy equipment and give it to people to use, and they might not even know how to use it. Maybe just 1 or 2 person in that group can know how to use it. So I don't know how much time government has when it comes to training these people, but do we need, or is it time that we needed to introduce programs that train cooperatives on how they should do mining? Maybe perhaps it has been a reason why cooperatives are not flourishing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that reminder. You know, as a federation, one of our mandate is to train our small-scale miners in how to run their businesses and how to do the mining. And, you know, we've been trained, actually. We've had various trainings in business, entrepreneurship trainings and technical. So then there is need for government to work with the cooperative. They have, you know, in most cases we understand that government is handicapped. They may not have enough personnel to go and train people in Impika on to do business. So if they are working with the federation, this is why we want, you know, if government could take us as their baby, even funding sometimes to say this certain amount of money should go to the federation of small-scale miners, so that we go into Mpika, go into mining areas to go and train people. What you are doing is a business. It's not quick survival where whatever you get immediately, you want to chew and tomorrow you go back. We also want to work with the finance institutions and tell them, can we move into there? When into Mpika, I'll give an example because this is where we are having a first
the most happening province at the moment,
so
district.
Who ask the financial institutions, let's go into there. When this person, this cooperative gets their gold and government says, here is marketing facility where you sell your gold, immediately they come out of there. Let's speak to them as a cooperative. Can you put money in the bank? Start putting bits and pieces of money in the bank, because in no time that resource will deplete. And when it depletes, what next? You need to have money as a cooperative reserved in a bank, and then you can get that money and say, people, this resource has depleted, let's share the money, each one goes and do their own business. So if you want to do again as a cooperative, let's get land, let's start farming together as a cooperative. Think what needs to be done is move into there. Even at the time that they will give them the launching of the cooperatives in Impika, we'll be there as a federation to try and educate these people, teach them, well, this is a good thing that government has done for you, but it's just not for you to quickly get and every day drunk the way the Zambians feel when you get money. It's about drinking, not investing. So I think we want to change the narrative and make people, but only if government would say, Federation for Small-Scale Miners, come, let's work together so that we help our people. It's all about actually development. It's all about our country. So we are keen as a federation to try and move in, work with government and help the people out there. But unless we are also equipped. Yeah.
So you mean the federation is not yet equipped?
Not yet equipped. We fend for ourselves.
How much support have you been receiving in the past?
From the government, we haven't been receiving any support, and we are lobbying. Even now, I'm saying, and we have meetings with the only thing is we are a mouthpiece that has no support. So I would comfortably say we haven't been receiving support, but maybe it's something that when we are saying things like this, government would be able to say, wow, we could use these guys to actually help us to speak to their people, because they understand each other. Let's send them out to go and train them. I'm a trainer. We've done a lot of trainings on trainer of trainers in terms of, I'm one of the major trainers of how to form cooperatives, how to run cooperatives. And some of these people that have formed cooperatives, they've formed them in a hurry where they told, not just put a group of people and go and form a cooperative. They don't know how to run it. They don't know how to use the resources.
They don't even know how profit will be shared when they sell.
They don't know how to do it. The only thing they will, is immediately they sell, they come out, how much is this? Give me my 200, my what? And then it turns about. So we want to go and train to say, please take advantage of this goodwill by government. They sent you here, they allowed you, they formalized you, and they gave you this so that you change your livelihood forever, not for just the days that you are mining.
As we come to the dying end of the program, Mr. Victor Kalesha, of course, he is a member of the Federation of the Small-Scale Miners Association of Zambia, and also the president of the Precious Minerals. Is it Precious Minerals?
Emerald Association.
Emerald Association of Zambia. You know, emeralds are precious minerals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just in the right direction. But of course, he is the president of the Emerald Association of Zambia, and also part of the Federation of Small-Scale Miners in the country. We have hosted this particular program because we want to see how we can grow the sector together, how you there seated in the comfort of your home can be motivated to actually become a miner. I know there is this notion, Mr. Kalesha, where people say not everyone can be doctors, not everyone can be police officers, and definitely not everyone can be a miner. So some people don't even take interest that they are sitting on millions of dollars. Even in homes, you've got this very strange, beautiful looking stone, and it doesn't even bother you because you just feel, I can't be a miner. So as we come to the dying end of the program, your concluding remarks on this particular sector?
It's a common knowledge that the Zambian economy from time of independence, even before, has been driven by the mining sector. But in as much as the economy has been driven by the mining sector, we haven't seen much of what Zambians benefit from the mining sector. The reason is simple, because most of these, from the time that the mines were nationalized, when the mines were sold out to foreign investors, Zambians have not been involved a lot. So we haven't seen much of the benefit as a country. Sometimes I look at in how much some of these foreign companies are putting in. Grizzly Mining are building a secondary school in Lufwanyama. Kajam are coming up with a learning institution. They are putting up a training center in there. So I think as a country, if we have local Zambians also participating, we will see this country going very far. Because, it's our resources, and we have this money that is floating around. The only thing that Zambians needs to change is, ukuchirisha. When you have money, you want to celebrate unreasonably and forgetting there's a tomorrow coming. So as in this sector, we want to invite every local Zambian to create interest. All of us cannot be miners, but it is a sector that is a game changer. Some of us, you see us day in, day out, passionately doing this gemstone business. It's because we know there is a future into it. But like earlier we said, women don't shy away. People with money don't shy away. Come, let's invest into this sector and build our country together.
Thank you so much for those remarks. Please, when you get into this sector, I love that. And I gave an example of our former garden boy who, one way or another, he got connected. And when he came back, the whole town, the whole Chitulika knew about him. I don't want to mention his name. I don't know where he is now. I don't know how far he's gone. But I remember when he came for the first time, even came back, I never boss number.
All right. That's what minerals do.
That's what minerals do. Just in a short time, he came by, bought 2 cars, and when he's passing through Chitulika,
from rags to riches.
And he would move from here to here. And I remember when he came back, the first thing he did is his wife out, took her back to the village and stuff like that. And now he became never done. And I remember after some time, I don't know what happened, somehow we saw one of his cars already. You know, this person was just in a short while, but I just don't know, the excitement just got too much to him, and to an extent where by the time I think we lost contact, it wasn't really as much as it was when he just came back at that particular time. And I think the next time, I think he might have gone to do the business. He might have been caught up in one or two issues with the law, and he ended up even losing part of the resources that he had.
Can I do have a minute before we close?
Please.
I think, we've got this government that has come in. There's government will in trying to support small-scale miners. We saw the other week there was signing a ceremony of 15 million. I don't know if it's a grant or a loan for exploration. And we have been trying from 2021 to date to see the number one marketer, the president. We've written letters to want to see him, because, the good thing about this president is he knows, he listens, he understands, but we don't know even where those letters get to. We want to have an interaction with him and tell him what we feel should be done into this sector, so that when he goes out there as a marketer for us as miners, small-scale miners, he also considers and says, this is what my people say. You've been following, and we've been knocking on every government door on how this sector should be driven forward, but nothing has been done. And we know very well that if we are given opportunity and have that interaction, all of us, the Small Scale Federation for Small Scale Miners, Emerald Association of Zambia, Women in Mining, we go as a delegation and sit with the principal, the president, will be able to change his mindset on what people tell him, because he's action oriented, and I will feel when he meets us, he will be able to get some sense from us. We are not getting much representation until we see the president and tell him what we want done in this sector. After all, it's for the development of the country.
Thank you so much, Mr. Victor Kalesha, there, the president of the Emerald Association of Zambia. We were discussing do cooperative models work in the mining sector. A very interesting discussion. It has been from me, your host, Prudence Chota, the entire Camnet TV production team, my manager today, Elijah Chifita, the black man from the English land. It's bye for now, and God bless you. Till next time, stay tuned to Camnet TV. We have other exciting programs during the course of the week. During the course of the day, you will also meet my colleague at 12 hours, where you will have to discuss a little important aspect on that particular segment. And of course, look out for our news today at 19:30 from me. It's bye for now, and God bless you.